Hello Graphite Knights, and in this video I, Benji, am going to walk through this picture with you guys while we talk about breaking the rules of art in order to improve art. So let's get into that. To start, as you can see, or as you saw, we're building a kind of like a Gundam, like a mech robot, something Pacific Rim-esque feeling, something that someone could sit inside. To do this, we're using 5-point perspective, which is something that I've really just been in love with recently. I've got kind of a smaller scope here. Some 5-point perspectives are going to go from the actual ends of the pages on each quadrant. You can see that my circle here is smaller. And as I'm, building this guy out, what we're going to do is we're going to treat everything above that line, that middle line, as if we were looking up at it, and more so in terms of angle when we get higher up towards the top of the circle. And then at the bottom of the circle, we're going to treat everything we're looking at as if we were looking down and further down at it. And so you can see here that as we look at that foot that we've just carved out, like we're clearly looking down at it. And yet as we look at the head that we're carving out here, we're looking up at it. We see the under angle. We can see the under the chin portion of it. I'm going to go ahead and give this guy kind of a room to sit in just while we're talking, just so that he doesn't feel like he's floating out in space too much. And we're going to play with this a little bit. This is not the final concept for the room. This is just me playing around. I love Procreate. Guys, if you haven't tried Procreate and you have an iPad, it's worth the investment. It's so much fun. The brushes feel like real. It's taken me some time to find the ones I like, and I'm not saying everyone is equal in value, but like the Bruni pencil feels like a pencil, and that's what I'm using here. And I'm a journal sketchbook kid. That's what I grew up on, and so for me, I love using that medium. It just makes so much sense to me. It takes so little thought to get along with it, and it feels like the comic books I used to make in my lined notebooks where I should have been taking science notes. And so it's a good time for me to get to do this kind of art on that platform, on that software. Anyways, we're crafting our guy. I want him sitting he's hanging off a hook, and we're gonna have these bars and boxes that he's sitting onto. He's gonna be like being worked on, so we're gonna have some guys in like hazmat suits doing some work on his front and back side. It'll be a good time. But you'll notice, maybe you have a different perspective than I. Have you ever walked into a room and it looks like this, where like the front walls kind of or the back walls kind of bulging out at you, and then the two side walls, and we're talking about a square room. Like this room will read as a square to us when we get to the end of this. It's going to be really bizarre, but look at the bends on those corners. This is like if first perspective went wild. That's what this would look like. And some of this, a lot of this, most of this is going to be because of 5-point perspective. Some of this is because of things I can't even begin to articulate. I'll say those two sidewalls, the way that they curve around, if you look at our circle, there is not a line that complements that. It's almost as if I had taken this circle, the one that you can kind of still see in our overlay, pushed it up one and made it bigger, and pushed it down one and made it bigger, and so that we had this like Venn diagram of 5 points. And that's now what we're playing with. And so they're like bending around their own horizon points. It's really trippy. And yet as we fill in details, we're going to be obeying the 5-point for the rest of this. It's going to somehow work together. It's going to somehow make sense to us. And there's this sense in which knowing the rules allows us to play with them. Like adding a single variable, right? So going from first point and being like, well, what happens if I add another point to the horizon? And all of a sudden you have a second point. You're like, whoa, this is crazy. I can see everything in a corner now. You're like, what if I add a third point and a fourth? And now we're at a fifth. And what makes this fifth, by the way, you can see the 4 dots at the end of each of this circle, right? Left, right, up, and down, is that there's a fifth one in the middle. And if you look at like our exterior boxes here and the way that they curve in, they're kind of pointing towards a spot behind the robot. Those are pointing into our 5th point. And so not everything is bound to those 2 farthest points, up or down, left or right. And so there's this beautiful thing in which like we don't actually see the world this way. I've heard this kind of described as like a fishbowl perspective. It makes me think of like if you could invert a panorama, right? Our exterior walls, our left and our right walls are kind of panorama-esque, but the other end of this is actually an inverted panorama in which we have this big bulging scene in the front and everything kind of fades to the side. And my question to you is, if you think about this, why would that feel more real, more life-giving in its presentation? If I made this flat, I'm going to make the argument here that if I made this image flat, it would not look as dynamic and as vibrant as it's going to look. You can decide that for yourself. That's okay. I have a drawing of an eagle that I'm working on, and it's for the comic book that I'm working on. It's called the Graphknight comic, and so it's going to be a graphic novel. We're going to release it. It's going to be a sweet time. But while I'm working on that, I have certain panels that are done with very few perspective points, and then I have one with these giant eagles that's done with a 5-point perspective. And if I put them side by side, you'll get to see this at some point. If you're subscribed and you're following along, this will post up on our channel eventually. But you'll get to see one of them in my. They're both great, especially for comic panels. You kind of have to choose your mileage in terms of what you can do with your pen, right? And so that you can, they call it ink mileage, they call it pen mileage. Animators talk about this a lot, but that you can make, let's say, 10,000 strokes over the course of the next week, and you have to decide how many of those are going to go into what. And so certain drawings will have more detail and others will have less. In animation, which the comic is not an animation, I would love that. That'd be so cool. Typically your fight scenes are going to have the highest amount of ink mileage, and so they kind of like save up for that. You'll notice, like, if there's a lot of scenes where there aren't movement happening, or you can't see the mouths when they're talking, there's a decent chance that they're actually making an investment, if they're really, like, committed to their show, if they want to do a good job with their show, to have a pretty fun fight scene coming up. And so it's a reason to get excited if you know the genre. But in terms of these two pictures, you'll see them side by side. And I think the eagle that is not done with much perspective looks much more flat, even though it's anatomically correct. Insofar as like a comic eagle is going to be anatomically correct. This is not an anatomy book of eagles, but I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the drawing. I still think the 5.1 looks so much better. Here, I'm going to say this. This is how we see the world, right? So I did try and bend this bar a little bit, but I don't think I bent it enough. So the bar that this guy's leaning on, I think I tried too much to make what we see, and it looks good. I like it. I do like it. So this will be a little chance to kind of case study this. This bar, I think, is great. Imagine this bar had no bend at all. I think it would be a little disruptive to the pop that we have in the photo so far. But I actually think that we can bend it even more, and we will bend it even more. And it will complement what I'm talking about here. You can see me writing this down. A visual draw of the eye. If you look at where everything is pointing right now, the robot being our main feature, his lens as well as his turret point us towards this circle I've spun out here. I also think the guy here who's watching, the kind of worker gentleman we have here in his white button up, he's looking there, so that spot is where we're being drawn to. And so I'm going to actually create a character here. I want a little guy in a hazmat suit up top. I think I'm going to have him taking a picture of the mech, and what we want him to do in doing that is kind of point us a little bit back towards the mech. So it'll be a fun little Easter egg. Our eyes will be drawn to him, but it won't be so disruptive that when we get to the end of this picture, which I would say that is the picture's end, that spot right there, because that's where all of our lines will be building to. These bars, I'm going to make them arc out even more, and so they're going to loop around this. It's going to point us to our mech, right? That bar points us across our mech that the mech is hanging across. It all kind of leads to that space right there. And I want that endpoint to be something that is satisfying for our eyes. It's something that actually encourages us to look again. And so by having us do a nod towards the mech, it encourages us, to give the mech a look. And then you'll see the little guy behind the mech, and you'll kind of be able to take in more of the details of the picture. But it will also gratify us, so that we're not just like, why did I go all this journey with my eyes? Why did I go on this whole journey to be staring at a window at the back of a factory? We've got those in my world, plenty of them. And so I want us to be able to enjoy that. I am going to take out those boxes that were beneath, because I just felt like the lines weren't reading the way I wanted to. You definitely can add more and still take away from your pictures, and so I'm trying to avoid that. Here's me kind of arcing out how I want this to fit around the 5-point perspective bubble that I have created for myself. Now again, breaking the rules here. This is not hitting those two dots on the left and right side of my 5-point perspective. Can I explain to you exactly what rule I'm using to make this happen and why I like it? No, I honestly, I can't. I don't understand 100% why this works, but there's something about working with something long enough that you start to feel comfortable enough to manipulate it. And I think that this is part of competency, even, is being able to say, you know what, we could do this. Now, I would love to be able to explain it. That would be amazing. I'm not at that point, but what I can say to you is that there are certain things that go beyond what our eye can see, that still read in terms of visual storytelling and actually add to it. And I would even argue that our eyes see in 5-point perspective more than we see in first, second, and third. Not that we don't see in first, second, and third perspective. Like, we can read those drawings and we're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But there's something about this that is more real. Do a little, experiment with me. Keep your head really still. Keep just staring at this picture. In the distance, there will be a vanishing point as far as your eyes can see forward. But again, without moving your head, notice all of a sudden, if you look up, you can see the ridges of your brows. And there's a vanishing point up there too. And if you look down, you can see your nose, and there's a vanishing point down there as well. And to the right, same story, and to the left, same story. And actually, you can see as far as your eyes can see in any direction. And there's a sense in which, like, not everything vanishes into one point when you're looking at it. There's a sense in which you do see kind of panoramically, and there's another sense in which the lie, and I think the uncompelling part about panoramas is it all just kind of gets like smushed and flattened backwards. This almost inverts that, and it allows things to still be close while you're seeing them, but also acknowledges that, like, yes, you have a vanishing point to your left and to your right and up and down, and there's just something about it that, even though we don't see the world like that, if I walked up to a straight bar, this is almost like drunk goggles experience. If you tried to navigate a world like this, it would be intense. And I would love to try that at some point. If this was a thing like in a video game, I probably would get sick, but it would be a very interesting try. If anyone wants to, do all the labor for that, drop it in the comments. Let me know. Be grateful for that. But I think there's something about this that actually makes it feel more real. I see a lot of Japanese artists, anime artists, who pull off these kinds of things with their characters. When they're doing fluid motions, they will make things pop more in front of you, and it adds, that's typically how it's just framed, is like, oh, this adds to, like, the emotion, the flow, and there is certainly a emotion. I've heard of animations even being described as, like, more of understanding how elements work than how anatomy works, although you need both. And, like, there's something about that, in that you're trying to create a flow for the eye that reads, and a story that can be told within pictures. And especially as someone like me who does graphic novels, I've done, hard fantasy novels before, and those are sweet, those are fun. But this is a different medium, and the way that the story happens and is told. Like, if you want to make a truly compelling paragraph as a narrative writer, you need to think through the pacing of your sentences and how your sentence can vary in terms of structure. Like, you don't want five-worded sentences following each other back to back to back. You want some short and some long and some medium. You want different word structures to complement each other. You don't want to use the same words over and over, right? People talk about set as kind of the classic one. But there are some people who can use set effectively and will vary other words. You want to pick those things well, so that there's a sense in which what you're doing is poetry, even if it's narrative, and everything is fitting together in such a way that it feels like art as you read it, and the words land and mean something. Now, for graphic novels, you don't get the chance to say, like, the mech droid was astonishingly large, and of course you dress up the saying and how you're saying that, right? You don't get a paragraph for that. You get a picture. And if you want that picture to mean something in the reader's mind outside of what they see in every other drawing of a mech, then you got to think through, like, okay, well, then how do I express that in a meaningful way? And I just think that if we saw a flat mech here, right, the kind of way that we have been taught to draw, the rules that art would typically give us, if you think through, like, your high school art classes or maybe your early college classes, I don't think it would accomplish the size that we want this thing to feel. Like, we want to be able to be distant so we can see the whole thing. Like, we want to take this in. And I'm not going to say that this is, like, the most complex mech I've ever made, but we do want it to feel grand. We want it to feel big. We want it to be clear that if we got up to this thing, our perspective would shift again. And so, like, you almost have to imagine, all right, let's say I could get down to that ground floor. I mean, we can see from the hazmat guys that it's a small area, but I'm looking from where I'm at down to its feet, And so there's some distance here already, right? Like it's already shrunk because of the distance that we have. And I still have to tilt my head up and down a little bit to really take this thing in. Some of it is above me and some of it is below me. And so, as we get closer, I mean, what we can picture a little bit the guy who's working on his forearm. What can he even take in of this thing? There's no way he can see his head. There's no way that he could see the top of his back. There's very little chance that he has a full. This is like more of a spaceship from his perspective, right? Where it's like, okay, well, like I'm working on a part of this thing, but like I can't even see the whole thing. It almost paints this picture that like if this was going to be steered internally, you would need multiple people inside it to do that. And I like that feeling. I think that it's important that it carries that kind of weight. We dressed up the room a little bit. I think there's more we could have done to dress up the room. We'll add some things for shading. I mean, we're working through that, as you can see. We're giving some colors. Some fun things about colors, I'll say, for shading. I do kind of like a 3-point shade. I'll use the same pencil generically. I'll still use like the Bruni for like colored pencils. But then I will kind of use the smudge tool to smooth it out, depending on the texture of the item. Some things I don't want to have a grainy texture, and so you kind of just smudge it with your finger, like you would on paper. That being said, there's more I think I could have done to add to the background of this. Certainly that might be something that I do at some point, just not for this video. For this video, I want to get these things down. And here's the bit about color that I want to say. Choose your base color. That's awesome. It's really fun. I purposely, you can see I leave a lot of my lines for my color or for my pencil, and that's not something you have to do. There's certainly a cost to that, but I will say that depending on the amount of lines you have is going to darken up the color you have, and so you can choose more vibrant colors, which colors that you don't necessarily find in real life, and it will balance it a little bit. And then as I go through and I do my 3-point shading, so I'll have a darker and a lighter. For the darker, I will saturate more, and for the lighter, I will saturate a little bit less. And that kind of creates the effect we have going here. I think it reads pretty well. I'm happy with it, I guess is what I'll say. We can get more into that in a different video. And then we're going to add these kind of like backlights. We're going to shade those out because we don't want them to be too strong. And again, those are going to draw your eyes to things too. So we want to be sensitive there. We've already got these 2 lights in the right that are going to push us towards that guy again, which is fine. We're happy with that. And then finally, we're going to have that other one in the left corner. And I'm really happy for this because I think it just balances composition a little bit. We gave it a little bit of a different color as well. And my thinking in that is that it will draw the eye because of its different color. If we're thinking through like a 60-30-10 rule in terms of color dropping, thinking that 10 is going to be the thing that stands out the most, where are your eyes most drawn to here in terms of color? I think that you're probably most drawn to either the lens of the visor, which is good, or to the bricks, maybe to the hazmat guys, but they're almost too tiny. And then your 30s are your blues, I would say. Your 60s are like your yellows and your grays. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video with me. Here's our little guy taking a picture of the hazmat suit, in the hazmat suit of the mech. I have enjoyed this time very much. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.